What do most Fortune 500 executives have in common? After more than 100 episodes recorded with those very executives from companies like Disney, Amazon, Netflix, Cigna, and Google, the answer is clear. They learned lessons in leadership from the fields and courts of their high school and collegiate sports teams. Some of our guests' athletic experience earned them a place in their sports Hall of Fame, like Chick-fil-A Chairman Dan Cathy. Some hung up their cleats after high school, like Delta Airlines CEO Ed Bastian, while others, like Condoleezza Rice, claimed they were terrible in their sport. But no matter their skill level, they have all told me that being a part of a team taught them lessons they still use as leaders today. In partnership with Maxwell Leadership, I'm your host, Don Yeager, here to give you an all-access pass to genuine, authentic, fireside chat-like conversations with today's business icons so that you can create powerful, positive change in your own organization. This is Corporate Competitor Podcast. With me for today's episode is Shannon Eusey, co-founder and CEO of Beacon Pointe Advisors, the largest female-led registered investment advisory firm in the United States. Shannon played volleyball at the University of California, Irvine, where she learned leadership lessons that helped her become one of Forbes' top 100 wealth advisors. Now, after 150 episodes, we are always looking for firsts, and Shannon is our first UC Irvine anteater on the podcast. I mean, come on, how do you not learn lessons while sporting an anteater on your jersey? She's a member of the CNBC Financial Advisory Council and co-authored a book titled Your Dollars, Our Cents that has ranked number one in 6 different business and finance categories. Today, she expresses her competitive fire through running marathons, and I know there will be lots to learn from her. So grab your bonus resource from corporatecompetitorpodcast.com/155 and download the notes and reflection questions we put together for you.
Failure just breeds success. Athletes know what it takes to win because they've experienced what it takes to lose. I mean, it's pretty easy after you lose something or don't get a deal or aren't growing like you're supposed to be growing to walk away and quit. But the athletes know, hey, I'm going to get back up the next day and get to practice, get to work. We don't go out and say we're looking for athletes as an organization. It just ends up being an attraction because of who we are as an organization.
Shannon, thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm completely honored to be on your podcast with some amazing leaders.
You are right in line. We can't wait to have you. Of all the CEOs we've interviewed, you're the first one that we have read that actually includes sports and your history in sports in your CEO bio. Tell me why.
I'm proud of it. I'm super proud of the work I did as an athlete and the commitment I had to my team, but also it is an incredible connecting piece. Most people, I don't care what walk of life, have some sort of sport background in their life, whether it was when they played peewee soccer or they played collegiate sports. It's an immediate connector with people.
So true. Actually, that's kind of the root of this entire podcast. So much can be learned in those worlds that can apply to the way you would ultimately grow to lead your company. I love it. So you're a runner, but you're not just running around the block. As of 2019, you'd already run 8 marathons, 6 of which were world major marathons. Running, you said, is not just for fitness or stress relief. The running helps you in your own head thinking about your business.
Yeah, well, you've clearly done your homework, and it sounds exhausting, that many marathons, but what maybe sounds a little bit more exhausting is I didn't start running my first marathon until 2016, literally in my mid-40s.
Right, yeah.
Within a few years, I had run all the world majors.
Wow.
Yeah, and I didn't train or race in high school. At age 40, I don't think I could run a mile. But one of my girlfriends said she's going to run this marathon with me. And I was like, I don't think I said that. But she had already outed me. So I was like, I'm going to do it. I mainly did it for exercise, for good physical health, but quickly realized it was incredible for mental health. Getting to a place where I was in a zone and I could actually really focus on myself, but also focus on my business. When I'm running, My brain is completely open to new ideas. You wouldn't believe the number of messages that I actually send to myself while I'm in the middle of a run with ideas for the business or things that we can do to improve or new entrepreneurial ideas. It truly re-energizes me. I get super excited.
You literally send yourself, what is it, voice memos?
Voice memos and text messages through voice memo. Honestly, I would be a serial entrepreneur if I was not doing what I do today. I come up with ideas every single week. You can ask my marketing team. They're like, seriously, you want to do this? One of the great ideas that came out of the running is a real focus on women. We have so many women in our organization. As you look at where the control of wealth is going across the world, women are controlling more and more wealth. Being able to focus more on women, being able to learn how women get their information about finance. And as a result, we actually wrote a book about investments geared toward women.
Yeah.
The clarity and the focus when I'm running by myself is incredible. And the other thing I do is I listen to a lot of podcasts. I listen to your podcast. I love How Leaders Lead with David Novak, how I built this. It allows me to really focus on continuous learning as well. A couple months ago, I finished the Boston Marathon. I had run it for the second time, actually, technically the third time. I did it virtually during COVID. And I was fortunate enough, even though it was a grueling training schedule and a little bit not so great weather, I was able to get a PR.
That is awesome. For those who don't know, personal record. Competing for you, even collegiately, goes back to volleyball. You were an athlete at UC Irvine. Is there a story from the court, from your time competing, that you still think about today?
I love this question. In the gym, our coach, Charlie, ran this drill, which was brutal. He put a chair in the middle of the court, and two of us would be running around the chair. And I mean, you had to avoid the person that you're doing the drill with, going incredibly fast as he's just chucking balls at you, and you have to dig those balls. And you had to get a certain amount up before the drill would end. For some reason, we never had an even amount of players on the team. You always needed 2 players in the drill. Who's going to do this for the second time? I mean, you're crazy to do it a second time. We're still on a group chat today, and my teammates still say, she's the one that did around the chair twice. Like, that's crazy. But I did, and I guess what I always felt is, can I give a little extra? Can I put in a little more work? It was never about winning in the game. It was about how hard could I practice so that I could perfect the art of the position I was in so that when I did get in a game, I was able to perform at a high level.
Yeah.
There's a great scene from the movie Rudy. It's a pivotal moment for him. He's a walk-on football player for Notre Dame, and he's noticeably physically inferior than most of his teammates. And his boss and mentor comes up to him, Fortune, the head groundskeeper, also a former football player, and he tells him, he's like, you're 5'0", 100 nothing, barely any athletic ability, but you hung in there with the best of the college players, and you're going to graduate from Notre Dame. Despite my collegiate allegiances, I could feel that because I was 5'0". The average height on my team was over 6 feet. So I definitely was trying to outplay my size. You really learn in those moments about character and who a player is. And I was incredibly fortunate because during that time, there was a man in the room. You know, I didn't know who this guy was. It wasn't like we had a bunch of people ever coming into practices. Our coach had practices pretty close. So I just thought it was another high school coach. And it happened to be the coach for UC Irvine. He left that gym. He was like, I want that player on my team. It was just being there at the right time and doing what you do when you don't think anybody else is looking.
Doing that little bit extra just randomly happened that it was with the right person in the room, and the end result was a college experience.
But I think that's life, right? It's what you do when others aren't looking. And I think Coach Wooden had a great quote about that. It defines a man's character or a woman's character. Do your best when no one's looking. When I wrote the business plan for Beacon Point, putting in 12-hour days, nobody's looking at me. Nobody's saying, what is she going to do next? It was up to me to put that time in. I was making $1. I had to give myself a paycheck so that I got insurance. I also was pregnant and kind of going after it. My husband had decided to stay home. So it was like the pressure was on, but you couldn't let up. I could have easily said, you know what, I'm going to go find another job where I can make a paycheck and give up on this dream. But I didn't, because I think that's the resilience that you learn from athletics pushes you to, persevere.
I love it. So many people in business talk about the importance of having mentors. You had a great one in your volleyball head coach at UCI. I'd love to learn what that mentorship relationship meant to you. and how it plays into the way you mentor others today.
Yeah. And Mike was phenomenal. Mike Puritz, coach of UCI for, a number of years. But I'm going to go back to my high school coach just for a second. I was around him, for 8 years playing not only club, but also high school volleyball because he was the coach there as well. Tough coach. We never missed practice. We never did not show up 10 minutes early. If we were not 10 minutes early, we were running lines. He taught us the value of other people's time. He taught us humility. Let the scoreboard do the talking. You guys are quiet. You do your work on the court. He also taught us to be tough. You got a hurt left arm? Play with your right. Figure it out. He also taught us the value of team, that if one person on our team makes a mistake, it's our team's mistake, as opposed to one person. The respect he taught us, the tenacity, the humility, I use all of that in business today. He really laid the foundation. I get to UCI and they're doing double-day practices, roughly 6 hours a day. At the start of the season, he had us show up ready to run a 7-minute mile. And if you didn't run a 7-minute mile, you're doing an extra hour of practice every day. He knew that would motivate the team to stay in shape over the summer before we got on the courts in the fall. Mike had been there for a number of years. He knew what needed to be done to get the best out of his players. It was quite an adjustment.
Yeah.
He also knew how to push us out of our comfort zone. We're not running up and down the court. We're staying on a relatively small court, so none of us are really runners per se. But he knew what it would take to push us out of our comfort zone and motivate us. And the other thing that I loved about Mike is he listened to his team.
Mm.
And many coaches don't. They're not taking the input of players. But Mike took the input from his players and actually put it into practice. When we would say, hey, Mike, what about running this type of an offense for the team? This is what we've seen looking at film on the other team. Could we switch it up a bit? He was open to the possibilities of switching things up. And I've seen it with my own kids, one who's a collegiate athlete and the others played competitive sports, where coaches feel that they have all the best answers. But oftentimes, you as a player are seeing something different being out there on the court.
So you have to be open to those other perspectives. But beyond that, as a leader, the other challenge is that you have to create a relationship with those you're leading that makes it clear you'll listen, you'll be okay. I mean, there are a lot of people that stop offering ideas because they don't ever feel like they get heard.
Yeah, I think that's clearly critical in business, being able to take in other people's ideas, listen, and even when they're critical against your own ideas. I welcome that, but a little bit of combat, and it's not negative, but more, let's challenge one another. Let's see how we can be better. And I don't excuse myself from that conversation. I meet with every new employee that joins the organization, which is a little bit crazy now. We've got 450 employees. And one of the things that I share with them is that we want to hear your perspective. You're coming from a different business, or you're freshly out of college, or you've been doing this for 20 years. You may think of things a little bit differently than how we're thinking of things. We want to know.
I love that line. I welcome a little bit of combat. That's strong. That's strong. And that you don't excuse yourself from it. By the way, just for reference, I want listeners to know when she said 10 minutes early, you should know she actually got on this call 10 minutes before we were scheduled to begin it. So we're not just talking here. I got to watch her live it out, which is pretty powerful. You and your husband, Rick, you have children, 4 children, and you have your own business, 450 employees. We talked about that. It goes without saying, you got a lot going on, but you have a unique way of managing your life and your children's activities. I know part of it involves color coding.
Let me just give you a picture of my day. I woke up, I grabbed coffee, I attempted to get a workout in, I got the kids to school, I got dressed, I got a power bar, raced to the office, driving with my niece, got on a conference call. When I got to the office, there were 100 emails magically appeared overnight. Then I get on a Zoom call. There's kids crying in the background. There's dogs barking because somebody forgot to put on mute. And the list goes on and on and on.
Driving with my knees.
Yes, I have to be deliberate with my time. Being deliberate with my time means making sure that I'm incredibly organized. The reason our system works, primarily, first and foremost, is because my husband, who we've been married for 28 years, and he's been a stay-at-home dad for 23 of those years.
Wow.
He's helped me create balance. We're really deliberate about our calendars. I have every single one of my kids' events in my calendars. Did I make every single event? No, but if you were to ask my kids, they would probably tell you I was at too many events and that I was the, room parent. I volunteered. I was their kids' coach. I coached all my kids in soccer. I was present in their life, but I wouldn't have been able to do it unless I had a schedule that was flexible enough to do that. And I actually was really aware of making sure that was in my calendar. I tell people this all the time because I was on a run this morning and one of the gals is like, how do you do it? Keeping my calendar deliberate and saying yes to the things that I should be saying yes to. Very early in my career, I said yes to everything. And I think that was the right move. Saying yes to everything, pushing myself outside my comfort zone, doing things that I really didn't want to do, whether it was a speaking engagement in front of 1,000 people or jumping out of an airplane. I said yes because I wanted to push myself out of my comfort zone because I know that that's when I grow the most as a leader and just as a human being. Today, I have a sticky note that says no. And part of the reason for that is I want to make sure that I'm not overbooking my schedule and not focused on the key priorities of my business.
A sticky note that says no. I love that.
Yes. So you can imagine I've got a finance background. I'm a female CEO, a lot of boards looking for diversity.
Yeah.
A lot of boards looking for finance help. So it's really taking it and saying, what's a priority for our family? What am I passionate about? And then putting that to work. And then I have a real big heart for helping the next generation and educating women. So I rarely say no to that type of event or environment because I think that's super important. And I think that's something that I'm able to give back. Several times a week, I will meet with next generation or folks trying to either get into our profession or learn more about wealth management.
So as the company has grown, how have you grown in terms of motivating your team members and being there for their needs? I know that's a strategy that's very important to you. I love the meet with every new employee, but with that many employees, how are you able to let them feel like you're still heavily invested in who they are?
You have to pass that on to other leaders in the organization. I can't be everywhere for everyone and be involved in everything. Really good leadership comes from knowing what you don't know and being able to pass that along to other people in the organization that know more than you know in a certain area. As an entrepreneur, you often come in wanting to be involved in every part of the business, but being able to let go of certain areas of the business and really bring up other leaders in the organization is very powerful. I believe my job today was very different than it was 5 years ago, 10 years ago. I really was chief executive officer. I feel like today I'm now chief encouragement officer.
Wow.
How do I bring the team up? How do I empower others? Let them do their jobs. As we look at sports, it's like you go from player to coach. Sometimes we go from player to player coach. I fell into that for a number of years.
As many entrepreneurship leaders do. I mean, they try to lead and at the same time still try to play.
Well, right. And it's a small distinction, but I think really moving to coach helps facilitate future leaders in your organization and really allows you to focus on the business as opposed to being focused in the business on a day-to-day basis.
Right.
Gosh, I've had a lot of great leaders in my life. I've been involved in YPO for 18 years and really had my own personal board of directors, which has been unbelievable. YPO definitely has that. You get a forum of your peers. They're all generally CEOs or presidents of their business. That's been tremendous because to have those folks who have seen you and watched you grow and helped you pivot and helped you look at the business from different perspectives is very healthy. So when you start to see successes in your business and seeing other people make decisions that you're like, hey, I'm not sure I would have made that decision that way, but what you did was right. Continue to water that, and let that grow within the organization. I was one of the founders of the business, but I don't know everything. What I knew 20 years ago and what I know now, I probably was just dumb 20 years ago thinking I could do this. I knew this when I started the business, but you've got to have incredible people around you and listening to other people. My dad's a great mentor. He's been on this entrepreneurial journey with me. He's actually the one you should be interviewing. He played rugby in college and shot down over Vietnam. That's the guy you want in your foxhole.
Wow.
I think it's continuing to pick those people's brains as to what they've seen over their lifetime and how you continue to improve is critical.
I love that. And I've ever been a member of YPO. I've spoken to many of them, and I'm fascinated by the way they draw people together and their ability to learn, pour into each other, do it in complete confidence. It's really pretty powerful. We actually had Scott Mordell, the CEO, on at one
Oh, yeah.
stage. Pretty powerful.
Yeah.
So I love your phrase, you like to hire people smarter than yourself, which is pretty hard to do given your level of accomplishment. But you say there's great value in letting them do their jobs and then listening to and implementing their ideas. As you mentioned, your coach who was able to listen so well to you. Can you talk about that balance of leading with both your presence and your absence?
Yeah, I do think we allow people to grow when we're not micromanaging them.
Mm.
Really giving folks the ability to make decisions, to be leaders within their areas or within their positions within the organization. Our business model has grown through the years, and we've pivoted like most businesses when things are different, or we see opportunities, which we've been fortunate enough to be on the front line of a lot of opportunities in our industry. But we acquire other entrepreneurial organizations. You can imagine if we don't let them continue to be entrepreneurs and leaders, that's stifling. We trust in the process. We trust in the people that we bring on as partners within the organization. Talk about freedom for leaders in business. When you're able to do this, you're able to really focus on the business. And like I said earlier, not being in the details in the business on a day-to-day basis. It's really empowering for an organization.
When I read and studied a little bit more about Beacon Point, one of the things that stood out to me was the power of culture and how culture is an important part of who you all are as an organization. As you acquire these entrepreneurial organizations, how do you maintain your culture while bringing other cultures within it? How do you meld the two, but make sure that the culture that you value is ultimately the one that stays top?
I love that. If you were to ask me what's one thing that would ever keep me up at night, that would be it. How do you maintain culture in a rapidly growing firm?
Yeah.
That's partly why I've moved from chief executive to chief encouragement officer, so that I can make sure that I'm spending time with our teams, making sure that culture permeates across the organization. I will tell you, our first 3 screens for anybody that joins our organization, I don't care what position, but acquisitions clearly, and our entire leadership team has a part in this, but it's no jerks, and absolutely no jerks.
All 3.
Yeah. And we don't give on that. We might be in a meeting and, at some point in the meeting, anybody on our leadership team, somebody will send me a message like, this isn't a great fit. Then we step away. It just doesn't matter if we can't get the right fit within the organization. So we do look when we meet with people to make sure that we're aligned culturally and that we're doing things in the best interest of our clients, period. Hard stop.
Have you ever walked away from one that you knew would be a really powerful and financially rewarding opportunity because they were a jerk?
All the time.
Wow.
It's too much work. One bad apple spoils a bunch. It's too much work. And we are looking for people that want to be part of something bigger than what they've already built and want to be really collaborative about that. We want to make sure we're working with great people.
You allow the culture to shape your recruiting.
100%.
Boy, so awesome. Many of your Beacon Point employees actually were Division I athletes: volleyball, tennis, soccer, golf, hurling, track and field. So this is part of your strategy and belief system. Why do you think former athletes make such great employees?
Athletes know what it takes to win because they've experienced what it takes to lose.
Mm.
This builds a callousness, resiliency, a little bit of a thick skin. I mean, it's pretty easy after you lose something or don't get a deal or aren't growing like you're supposed to be growing to walk away and quit. But the athletes know, hey, I'm going to get back up the next day and get to practice, get to work. Michael Jordan, how many seasons did he play? Like 15 seasons? How many winning seasons? 6?
That's right.
Arguably one of the world's best athletes, maybe the best. But he had to pick himself up those 9 years that he didn't win with the world saying, why didn't you win?
Right.
You know what he did during that time? I mean, he sharpened himself so that he could win. Failure just breeds success.
Right.
It's that commitment, that determination, that grit, and the team mentality that actually just attracts not only athletes to us, but us to athletes. We don't go out and say we're looking for athletes as an organization. It just ends up being an attraction because of who we are as an organization.
Totally agree. And I love the reference of Jordan. He also, one of the things he was always so magical about was that every off season, he figured some place in his game where he could go to get better. To your point, the work done when no one was watching, the work done when the cameras weren't on. You used the word teams there a second ago. A lot of people refer to their corporate organizations as teams. Most often, I consider that an overused word. I don't think most of them really are teams. They just happen to work at the same place. If you were coaching a young version of you, a younger leader, on how to take a group of individuals, build them into an organization that really was a team that could go do something special, what are some of the coaching points you would give them, pulling those folks together to take them over that bridge to someplace special?
It all boils down to trust. How do you get trust with people? You do what you say you're going to do, and you're vulnerable. Too many times we see leaders who feel they have to know it all, being vulnerable with your team, saying, I don't have the answer, or let's get in this together and figure it out. Let me get my hands dirty with you. And also sharing life experiences. That helps. I am an open book with our team. I wear my heart on my sleeve. I will be right behind you, cheering you on along the way. That develops not only a friendship, but a team and trust. Making sure you're high-fiving or fist bumping. That's what a team does. We build each other up when things are great, but we also build each other up when things are rough. I went through cancer in 2016, and it wasn't a terrible cancer. It was thyroid cancer. But I didn't, you don't know what you don't know when you're going through something like that.
Still the C word.
Yeah, it's still yeah, right. It just seems scary. But just telling the team like, hey, I need you guys to be here for me so that I might not be here for a bit. You guys are in charge. Going through challenges with our kids and being able to be open about it and being able to, help others through that openness is powerful.
Oh, that is an absolute. One of the things that we saw, you wrote your business plan for the company that now you lead as part of grad school work at UCLA.
Go Bruins.
Go Bruins, because we already did go Anteaters. But how many times have we heard this? Fred Smith at FedEx, you name them. How many of them had professors who said, that's a bad idea, it's going to flop? In fact, I think you got a B on your business plan, though you should invite your professor to come to work for you at some stage. Have you ever figured out what it was that professor couldn't see?
So I'll give a professor a little grace. Yes, I did receive a B. And having taught in business school, which I went back to teach in the business school at UC Irvine, I know that a B is say, thank you for showing up. It's not B school for business school. You get Bs if you show up and participate, do the work. Yeah. I think there's a little bit of a stigma in business that everything must be quantifiable, charted, perfectly data-driven. Like your left brain trumps all, and maybe not as much credence is played on the right brain. Really having emotional intelligence, really thinking a little bit outside the box in terms of what's being served in the industry today and what might be a little bit different. I think what my business school professor missed was the passion, the tenacity, the ability to form a great team and have great folks behind you and alongside you growing an organization. Someone asked me recently if they thought it was the business plan that drove the firm to success. No, it wasn't the business plan, because the business plan obviously has morphed and changed over the years. Great ideas only work if you've got incredible people around you. And I'm confident that it was absolutely our team that helped drive the success and continues to drive the success of the organization.
I love it. I hope that professor ultimately gave you his money to invest.
He hasn't yet, but maybe I'll ask.
That's it. You wrote a book, Your Dollars Are Cents. It has a lot of tips on personal finance, business life, budgeting, money management. And you break those topics down in the book, even for people who are really simple readers. And you try to make it entertaining and informative. Tell us, what were you hoping to make sure you left with others when they read that book?
So we've been really fortunate. And again, it's not something we necessarily sought out for, but we have a number of incredible women in our organization. So a number of women in the organization and I came together just saying, how do we teach the next generation about finance?
Mm.
Because what we saw as young adults, nobody's teaching anyone about the basics of finance. Yet women are continuing to control more and more of the wealth. How do we change that? We want to leave our mark, getting women coming to this proverbial investment table. So we wrote this book for women, by women. Basics of Finance. It's fun, easy read, but it is bringing more women to the table and at least giving women some of the tools to equip them to feel real smart about finance and make some really good decisions about their investments. And I give it out to everybody. We don't make any money on it. We do a lot of work on financial literacy and helping women. And our feeling is the more information we can give to these young women, the more financial freedom they'll have throughout their life.
No question. Writing the book obviously gives you an opportunity to share in a unique way, in a way that people can come to at any time of the day or night to try to learn. And I think that's pretty exciting. I did want to also ask, you were a Girl Scout. We're big scouting fans in our family. How did that experience affect you? And you look at your business life and all the other things that have occurred. If you could pour back that far.
Do you know how the Girl Scouts define girl? Go-getter, innovator, risk-taker, and leader.
I love it.
It's perfect. I don't know when they came up with that, but I love it. And I think it speaks to women in business, regardless of what position you are in business. You've got to be a go-getter to get things done. You've got to think about innovating. You've got to take risks, and you've got to be a leader. Being a Girl Scout taught me a lot of these skills at a very young age. Let's be honest, I was the #1 Girl Scout cookie salesperson in my troop.
Cookie. I kind of had a sense.
I earned a lot of different badges and, a lot of things that probably took me a little bit out of my comfort zone that, I otherwise wouldn't have done. I think I learned the necessary technical and tactical skills to think creatively and innovatively. I highly recommend the program because I do think it pushes girls and women outside their comfort zone and gave me the courage and planted the seeds very early that I could be anything I wanted to be.
One of my favorite interviews years ago was with Frances Hesselbein, the founder of Girl Scouts. What an incredible leader and woman she was. Really unbelievable. 30 years of doing this as a writer, journalist, author. I've asked a lot of leaders, coaches, athletes, others, if you could pick one habit, something that you built into your daily routine that you believe gave you a competitive advantage over other people, a single thing that you would turn to and say, I think that gave me an upper hand, what would the habit be?
Discipline. Whether it's being disciplined about my calendar, being disciplined about making sure I'm taking care of myself by getting a run in every day, making sure I'm disciplined about what I'm saying yes to, disciplined about what I want to get accomplished in the day. Discipline.
I love it. Almost all the great winners that conversation has come up with, not a single one points to some physical gift. It's always some mental, emotional, spiritual discipline, something that they've built into where they've governed themselves in a unique way. We love to talk about momentum. The idea of taking a moment where something happens positively or negatively and using it as an accelerant in your effort to grow or become bigger, better as a team.
That's true. You see that in sports all the time. Gosh, I still see it in my kids' high school sports and college sports. Somebody takes momentum and you see what it does to the other team.
Right.
It's funny. One of the things I tell my kids is luck favors the prepared.
Mm.
While that's true, you've got to be prepared. You've got to be prepared for change and be able to see opportunity when it's right in front of you. Too many of us say, you know what, I don't think that's the opportunity. We're still doing really well here. Let's keep doing the same way, same thing. But I've been fortunate in my career that we as a team have seen some things in our business that have made us pivot, whether it's, make sure that we're working more with women in the organization, because I think that's very powerful, or it's moving to an acquisition strategy, which we hadn't done for the first 10 years of the business.
Wow. So wonderfully put. Shannon Eusey, I know you have no on a sticky note there that tells you not to accept certain things. I am blessed today, I know we all are, that you said yes to join us today, share some wonderful stories, wisdom, Go Anteaters. I want to thank you today for being a corporate competitor with us.
Thank you, Don. I really appreciate it. Enjoyed the conversation.
Man, that was so much fun. I do have to start out by thanking our good friend and former podcast guest, Stan Moss from Poland Capital, for introducing us to Shannon. He saw in her the exact kind of guest that would leave value spread all over the field for us. And she absolutely did. I guess I should say court, since she's volleyball. Her concepts around that mentor relationship she had with her two coaches, high school and college, really stood out to me as the first real great lesson I learned. I loved the way her high school coach talked to her about the concepts of what it meant to be right and part of that team, to be tough, to show humility. If one person makes a mistake, it's everyone's mistake. Show up 10 minutes early because that's respectful. You're showing the respect of other people's time. But then I love even more than that, that she actually didn't just talk about those things. She showed up for our podcast 10 minutes early. Savannah and I were actually doing our prep work when suddenly, boom, up comes Shannon on the screen. My second great takeaway was when she talked about internally within her 450 employees, giving them a voice, giving them the ability to push back in some ways. Her line, I welcome a little bit of combat. That's powerful. And how many CEOs say that and then live it out and mean it? Encouraging that intellectual challenging of leadership in a way that maybe sometimes you see something that the leader doesn't see. Do you have the freedom and the capacity to be able to step in and offer a little bit of combat? And then finally, third, she spoke our language completely when she talked about bringing athletes into her family, bringing athletes into her work community, because athletes know what it takes to win because they have experienced what it takes to lose. Losing creates a little resilience. It builds some thick skin. You have to get up the next day and go to work. Shannon was a gift today. There are lessons here that I will be relaying to my kids when I get home tonight. If you could share one habit, one thing you've done consistently that allowed you to separate yourself from your competitors, what would it be? In my 30-year career, 2,500 of the greatest athletes, coaches, and leaders answered that question for me.
This is Don Yeager, who did that that article I was telling you about.
Don, Dave Sims with Coach K. How you doing?
Hey, Don. How you doing, my man? Great, sir.
What they gave to me is what I'm giving to you in my online course, Journey to Greatness. Through engaging storytelling and on-demand videos, you will learn the 16 habits that will jumpstart your personal growth. I will instruct you on how to apply these winning characteristics to your life through custom workbook exercises. We are slashing the price for our podcast listeners. Lifetime access to Journey to Greatness is normally $399, but for our podcast listeners, it will be $49 with the code podcast at checkout. Click the banner on corporatecompetitorpodcast.com to enroll.